Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Hustle. This, of course, is a 2022 Netflix film. Man, I know that this is a basketball movie, but it's also this kind of like Cinderella kind of story, like rags to riches, to where we go on and we have this guy with some very like just street talent, and we have just Stanley just stumbling upon this guy randomly on some day and is like, wait a minute, like I have to go on and just like I gotta stalk this kid and follow him and try to talk to him and convince him that like I am who I am, and like I'm from the 76ers and I'm a scout, and I want to go on and see what I can do with this kid, because eventually he's going to be a really big thing for basketball. So we go on, and this story not only has this basketball like rags to riches, but it also has some heart in it too. There's some kind of heartbreaking stories from Bo's side of things, but then also Stanley's thing, where it seems that he was to have gone on and was to have been involved in an NCAA championship, and eventually one mistake was to cost him all that. And so yeah, like there's something really interesting here. Like, I know probably people will probably label this kind of like the movie The Scout or Million Dollar Arm, or probably any number of those kind of movies where you have to go on and find somebody from out of nowhere and just go on to eventually train them and get them into the big leagues. And so that could be like the normal, like, oh well, like this is the same old kind of story. But like, I haven't heard it very often from like a basketball side of things. Every once in a while you get like a football or baseball, like I already said, but very rarely do you ever get like a basketball, like from street to NBA, unless there is something that I'm missing somewhere. But anyways, unless you go on and you have like any underdog basketball movie, and then like that would probably just be like it. But so with that said, so yeah, so we have Stanley Sugarman, who is a scout for the 76ers within a good portion of this movie. And so it seems that everything is going right for Stanley, and it seems that Stanley is to go on and go from scout to assistant coach. But then all of a sudden there seems to be some drastic changes, and Stanley is back to being a scout again. And so Stanley is to go on and find some potential with unlikely places, and then eventually Stanley is to believe in this kid, like, or this guy, so much so that he will basically put his life on it. And that becomes a very interesting story, and a story that I really enjoyed. So with that said, that was very vague, but like I kind of need to kind of be vague, because otherwise there's not going to be much for me to go on and talk about when we get into spoilers. So grading wise, this one's kind of a toughie, because it's a sports film. I would have to say that this is like, I feel like it's tiptoeing into being a great film. Like, I would just say there is one moment in here where I kind of like got like this like a little bit of emotional moment, just because it was this kind of surprise. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like that whole moment where we get to see this surprise, let's just say, that made me go on like, man, like this feels good. This is a feel good kind of movie, and we have it to where Stanley Sugarman is going on and like really trying to figure out ways to motivate Bo Cruz in this movie. Going on and having Stanley calling him like, "Oh, like you're the cruise missile and this and that," and so he's like, "Ah, you don't like that name?" And Bo is like, "No, I don't." And so it's a whole ragging of that. Um, but come to find out, like Bo was to actually have worked for a number of teams and stuff like that, like Minnesota and Nuggets and stuff like that. So like this was a guy that was a pro baller and just went on and did a movie. Because I'm assuming since Stanley knows like or Adam Sandler knows a lot about basketball, like I'm sure he easily knew who all to hire for this film. Um, but anyways, with that said, let's go into this film and let's go into just the double five time territory. Let's go into spoilers. So with that said, it's about that time to just go into that timed territory. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So really, there's like also very rare like scout movies. Um, like I know there's like Trouble with the Curve with Clint Eastwood and Justin Timberlake. But yeah, like, but I kind of like these kind of these scout movies like Million Dollar Arm and stuff like that, where it's just kind of like these guys who find talent in unusual places. Like those are kind of really interesting, or just being able to work things out. Or Moneyball. Like Moneyball is kind of interesting to eventually see guys like Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill go on and find these Island of Misfit Toy kind of talents. But anyways, let's go on. So Stanley, of course, is working with the 76ers, and so he's going through and starting to go to places like Berlin or Spain, like all across the world, to go on and find these guys to eventually possibly work into either the draft or possibly to get bought by the 76ers. So Stanley's going on and consistently looking for talent, and he, of course, is to be eating all kinds of fast food because that's the only thing available. Burger Kings, KFCs, stuff along those lines. And we go on and have, of course, Stanley talking to his wife Teresa, who is Queen Latifah in this movie. I'm like, oh, cool! Like it's been a while since I've seen Queen Latifah. It's kind of cool. I think she might have had like some kind of like show or movie or something. I don't know. Anyways, like Equalizer, yeah. Like I was thinking, like, yeah, she had some kind of show or movie coming out, but like, yes, but it's kind of cool seeing Queen Latifah in this movie. So, but Teresa is talking with Stanley, like, oh, like you're destroying your body with all the fast food. It's like there's a lot of people that kind of feel that way. It's like, yeah, but it's just the convenience of it, or just eventually you'll figure out a way to, like, even though with that kind of food, kind of figure out a diet kind of system to kind of work your way through it. But anyways, so so we go on, and so Stanley is eventually at first going and finding this guy who, of course, is to be called Big Siberian, Dmitry Jonov. Jononovic. Janovic. So we go on and we have it to where Stanley is looking at this guy. Is like, man, like this guy is gonna be like something. And so like he's going on and he's playing really well, and all of a sudden Stanley is to go on and ask this guy, the Big Siberian, like, well, hey, like, supposedly your records are to say that you're 22, and the Big Siberian is like, yeah, I'm 22. And then we go on and have Stanley, who's to meet the Big Siberian's son, and he's supposed to be like 10 or 11. And Stanley's like, well, do you have a birth certificate, kid? Do you have any records of that? And Big Cyprian is like, no, big fire. And so Stanley's like, yeah, no. Like, no. Like, this is going to cause all kind of trouble. No. So Stanley goes on and is to go through other things of this list. And so he is to be looking at a guy named Haas. And so that seems to be like the unscratching part of his list. And so now he's going back to the 76ers headquarters. And we, of course, go on have it to where we have Stanley that is supposed to be looking at this guy, Haas, but he's not interested. And we have Vince Merrick, who, of course, is to be the Suns' owner of the 76ers, that is just like, no, I like this guy. Like, I want Haas. And so the owner actually is Rex Merrick, who, of course, is Robert Duvall. I'm like, yeah, I love Robert Duvall. Like, especially in the movie, if you guys were to ever see it, called Phenomena with John Travolta. I know that's like a random film. Or You Can't Help But Also, God, what was the one? There was some other movie where Robert Duvall was to be this like astronaut, and he, of course, was to be like, I want to say it was like Deep Impact or something like that. It was some kind of movie like that. I don't want to waste too much time. But he was also in like Kicking and Screaming as Will Ferrell's dad. But anyways, moving on. So we have Stanley and we have Vince starting to bicker about Haas. And Vince is saying, it's like, well, hey, like, this guy is getting bored where he's at, and that's why he's showing up late to places, or that's why he's going on and doing what he's doing. And Stanley's like, no, this guy's just lazy. This guy is just like he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. Maybe he's burnt out or something. So we go on and we have Vince that's telling his father, it's like, well, hey, like, if you go on and don't draft this guy, if you go on and don't pick this guy, like, I'm gonna hurt somebody. I'm gonna kill someone. Like, this is your best pick here. And Stanley's like, so eventually Stanley just says, like, oh, cool, like, fine, great. So Rex is going on and taking Stanley aside and saying, like, you know what, like, you never backed down before. Like, you would go on and, like, you would want to just fight people before. Like, and so, like, where is that? Like, so we have it to where Rex believes in Stanley so much so that he wants to finally give him this assistant coaching job for the 76ers to kind of finally get him off the road. And so Rex is to mention how this office used to be his uncle's. And Stanley's like, seriously? You made your uncle work in an office this small? But Stanley's like, you know what, I really appreciate this. So we go on and we have Stanley telling his wife, like, what all happened. And, like, this, like, he's on cloud 9. He can finally just go on and just be relieved that they're probably going to get more money and all this stuff. So all of a sudden, while Stanley's driving home, he all of a sudden is hearing on the radio that Rex Maverick had passed away. And Stanley's like, oh my god. So now the company is to have two kids. We have it to where Vince Maverick, who had really been arguing with Stanley already about that whole draft pick. And we also have Cat Maverick, who is kind of more on Stanley's side. And it seems that there's an opportunity for her to go on and own this team. So we go on and we have it to where like Stanley's going to the funeral of Rex and just apologizing to everybody, like sorry for your loss, and going and meeting with a lot of his friends, like Leon, who is actually Kenny Smith, which we'll see a lot in this film, which I thought was really cool. So we go on and we have Stanley, who eventually is to ask Kat, like, well, hey, like, are you gonna go on and are you gonna like take up ownership of the team and just kind of like seeing who's to go where? And it's like, no, like Vince is going to turn over and be the owner. And Stanley is just realizing that his days are numbered. So Stanley is to go on to realize that instead of being the assistant coach, he's just going to get reshifted to go back and be a scout. Because at first, Stanley was to be coaching Haas and like trying to get Haas's focus and trying to go on and get this guy to work. And so, because Vince is to realize what a mistake that he had made, and that Vince is now telling Stanley, it's like, well, hey man, like, I made a mistake, and so now I need you to go on and become a scout again instead of an assistant coach, so you can find me that missing piece of this team's puzzle so we can win a championship. And Stanley's like, really? Like, I don't want to be a scout again. And Vince is like, but I need you. So Stanley's like, like, really? Because we go on and we have Stanley who's to meet up with Leon. And Leon is saying, like, hey, how about you just, like, be an agent with me? Because, like, there's, like, the tide is shifting, and I don't think it's going to be shifting in your way. Like, I'm paraphrasing here, but, like, Leon is to know, like, Vince is taking control, and, like, you know, like, you might as well try to go on and probably do something else, mosey on somewhere else. So we go on and we have Stanley that is to talk with Leon and just kind of just get together. And so we go on and we just have Stanley who is like, hey man, like, where can I just go to just play some basketball, like just kind of have fun. And so Stanley goes to this one court, and all of a sudden is to go on and see a number of guys just kind of doing like a scrimmage together. Just these guys who were to all just be from all these walks of life. So we have Bo Cruz within this heap, and he's wearing like construction shoes. And Stanley's looking at him as like, okay, that's that's interesting. Kind of thinking that this guy probably is to be wearing these shoes because it's some like work or something. But no, like Bo Cruz is a construction worker, but we have it to where Bo Cruz tends to just hustle people out of money anyways because he's just better than a lot of them. So Stanley is watching on as he's just watching this game. And so we have it to where Bo Cruz is going up against this guy who is to be Mr. Everything consistently. And Bo is consistently going on and shutting this guy out, considering eventually, like, there was no one to eventually block him. And then Bo Cruz decides to block him. And so eventually, like, this guy isn't getting any shots off, and so all of a sudden we have it to where Mr. Everything is getting really upset that eventually like he ended up going on and losing money because of this guy. So Bo Cruz decides, like, well, hey, like, how about you and me? We'll go and we'll put money on the court, and eventually, if uh if I can stump you out after 3 shots, then like I take the money. So Mr. Everything goes on and continues to try. Bo snuffs him out every single time, and so Bo collects his money and then is to get out of there and go and run onto this bus. Stanley is running, sprinting after this guy, and he finds him on this bus and he's like, I've never ran like that fast before. I thought my ankle was gonna pop. So Stanley is trying to talk to Bo Cruz like in Spanish because of course Stanley is consistently having this Google translator, and so Stanley is going on and telling Bo that it's like, oh my god, like you're a fantasy, like anybody would want you, and this and that, and Bo Cruz is like, what the is this guy talking about? So all of a sudden we had the door open on this bus and Bo walks off, and so Stanley is now like stuck by this door. So Stanley is to eventually hunt and chase after this Bo Cruz guy and is to find out where he lives. And so Stanley is to find out where Bo Cruz lives, and then Bo Cruz is like, hey man, like, are you stalking me? What are you doing? And Stanley's like, oh my god, you could understand English. And Bo's like, yeah, but like you were saying some weird. So Stanley is trying to show Bo Cruz that he's a NBA scout. So Stanley goes on and is desperately trying to call one of these basketball athletes, and so that way this guy would know exactly who like to really just say that, like, yeah, like I am a scout, like I know professional basketball players. So we go on and we of course have it to where Stanley is to go on, call this basketball athlete, and so it seems that this athlete at first is to play off that he doesn't know Stanley, and like, hey, why are you calling? But then all of a sudden, like, he goes on to be like, no, I know Stanley, like, we're old friends, and like, hey man, like, who are you? I'm Bo Cruz. Oh, hey, great. So so we go on, and now that it seems that Bo Cruz is convinced, we then go on and have it, of course, where I cannot frickin' find this basketball player. Good God, are you frickin' kidding me? Out of all the list of all these people, I guess that's a pointless endeavor. Sorry. So, anyways, we have it to where Bo comes in, is to realize that Bo has a daughter named Lucia and a mother called Paulo or Paula. I'm hoping I'm saying that somewhere correctly. Paloa. Let's go with that. So we go on, and so Bo is actually having his mother do most of the talking about his upbringing, and because we really have it to where Stanley wants to know like this guy's whole story. And so we have Pola that is going on and telling Stanley's story, and so eventually they kind of leave out the part that this guy has a police record. Yeah. That ends up happening a little bit later while they're going through airport security. But anyways, so we go on and we have to, of course, Paloa is to mention that like the wife is out of the picture, so so this mother is going on and taking care of Lucia, and so we eventually go on and have it to where Paloa is uh, to really ask Stanley, like, well, how much is he going to get paid? Because Bo is wanting to go on and do this construction job tomorrow. And so we have it to where, like, Stanley's like, no, you're going to be, like, playing for the NBA. Like, you're going to be working with the NBA. Like, the starting salary is 900,000. Like, do you want something like that? Do you? And so they're like, whoa, like, yeah, I think he's just gonna call in sick tomorrow from that construction job. And Stanley's like, yeah, good idea. So we go on and we have Bo, who eventually is to go on and do this scrimmage with a number of players to possibly get in this combined place where it seems that people are going to be really looking and scouting for guys. So we go on and we have it at first where Bo is to go on and be training with a bunch of these Spanish players. And so Bo goes on and is to go through and have to jump and smack uh, this line. And so he ends up jumping up and he ends up like destroying the whole line, and like, oh my god, like he got that high, holy cow. So we have it, of course, where like Stanley is to change from getting like construction shoes to actual sneakers. Like we go on and we have Stanley who's going and giving Bo at one point, he ends up giving him like Kobe shoes. So we we go on and we have Bo that seems like through this practice, it's like, ooh, like this guy is looking pretty good. So eventually he goes on and makes his way to America. And we, of course, have it to where Vince Merrick is saying, it's like, well, like, you know what? I'm not really interested in this Bo Cruz guy. Like, like, no, like, there's just something about him. So we have to where Stanley Sugarman and Bo Cruz are making it to America, and all of a sudden Bo Cruz ends up getting stopped, and so Stanley is like, well, wait a minute, like he's with me, like, so he's kind of chasing after him, and plus also Stanley and Bo like are trading like airplane tickets, so that way Bo can get like the first class treatment, so he can get like room for his legs, and like Stanley just kind of like sitting back and coach. And so Bo comes back to where Stanley is and kind of gives him like certain things of like food and whatever. And Stanley's going on like, no, I think everyone's gonna hate me if you bring back stuff here. And he's like, hey man, you got to try this. Like the funniest thing is we have Bo Cruz that goes on and has like one bite of everything, and then he's like, nah, like I only had one chip, or I only had one bite of that steak, or I only had one bite of it. I'm like, all this stuff costs money. Like Stanley's like, all this stuff costs. like I get it that you're gonna be like possibly an NBA player, but like all this stuff, like this adds up. People are gonna be ticked. As well as Bo going on and having a bunch of adult movies that I guess he's watching, I guess at some point. So, like, a lot of this is starting to add up, and Stanley is, like, pocketing the money for most of this right now, and because Bo, I guess, doesn't realize, like, just thinks that he's, like, a millionaire, I guess. So, we go on, and we have Stanley that Stanley is eventually taking Bo to this place where it's like, hey man, just kind of watch him play with all these guys. So because Vince Merrick is there, not realizing that Stanley was to, like, with his own money, fly Bo to this place regardless of the 76ers like accepting this or not, or like officially like sanctioning Stanley to bring this guy over. So we go on and we have Stanley who's having Bo Cruz play with a guy named Kermit. And so it seems that these two are going to continue to consistently play together. And so, like, throughout this movie, like, there's going to be a consistent meeting. So we have Stanley that's going on and just telling Bo, it's like, well, hey, man, just kind of, like, do what you do. Like, people are gonna love it, blah, blah, blah. So Bo goes in there, and so Bo, of course, is eventually, it seems like he's getting some shutouts. Like in the beginning, people are like, ooh, wow. But then all of a sudden, it seems that stuff ends up getting taken away from him. Kermit starts to eventually continue to do well. And then they're forgetting about Bo, because Bo is also starting to get gassed out also. And so it just starts to become, it's like, well, like, this guy like had a really good start, but like he's still rough. He's still rough around the edges. So we go on, and so now Stanley has to go on and train Bo and do all these kind of like weight training, weightlifting, cardio, all of this kind of training, like bicycling and all this kind of stuff, to eventually get this guy to be in shape enough, and to eventually get Bo to be quick enough to eventually have this certain kind of time to eventually run up and down the street. So now we have this training scenario where it seems that eventually Bo is to be very winded, but eventually he is to eventually get to the point of beating this time. And so Stanley's like, man, like, come on, cruise missile, come on. Like, he's like, I hate that name. So we go on through all this training. So Bo goes through all of this training, and eventually is to have to do all these like ball techniques, and is to have to learn all these kind of different ways to toss this ball, and eventually it's a learning curve to do all that. So we go on, and so Stanley is telling Leon that it's like, well, hey, like, you're gonna get ready for this, like, to have this guy being put in like the combine, right, in 6 weeks time, right? And Leon's like, sure, yeah, I think I'll be able to like fit him in. So all of a sudden we go on, and we have Bo Cruz that eventually is to hear that he's not going to get in the combine because Stanley is calling for Leon, and so it seems like things aren't going to work out. So we now have to have Bo do this like hashtag Bo challenge, where it comes back to him having to hustle people like he had done before. So, and we also had the moment after we find out why Bo was in trouble with the people at the airport. Let's get into that. So Bo, come to find out, has an assault charge on his record. And so Bo, it seemed, was to find out that his ex-wife was to try to get custody of his daughter, just so that way they can go on and get money from the government to take care of this girl. And So Bo went over to that house and was talking to that guy, and one thing led to another, and he ended up like hurting this guy. So like it was all just a misunderstanding, and eventually it just kind of escalated and things just happened. So like we find out that Bo just went over there to eventually find out that they were trying to take advantage of having their daughter there, and it wasn't because of love. It was just like, hey, government from money from the government, and that's all that really mattered. So we go on and we eventually have it where we now go to the combine, or we no wait, we go to Bo doing this Bo challenge, this hashtag Bo challenge. Stanley is going on and going to random people on these courts and is saying like, well, hey, like if you get a shot off of him, we'll give you $500. If you go on and you do this, you do that, like you get $1,000 and this and that, just kind of amping up this hustle. So it seems maybe one out of like 20 people are to actually get paid off here, but everyone else is to kind of get smoked by Bo at some point. So eventually everybody's going like, oh my god, this Bo, this guy, this. So we have like Allen Iversons, we have a whole bunch of pro basketball players that are trying to amp up that this guy is really all that good. And so all of a sudden we have it to where Bo is becoming such a viral success with the idea that Alex was to have about like, well, hey, like since Alex had gone on and shot a lot of Bo's practices to try to get like, of course, their name out there, or Bo's name out there to have some footage. We then turn around and have Alex who's like, well, like, you know, that one video that Bo had, like, got 2 million hits. And how about we just kind of go on and keep going through, like, social medias to keep getting these hits and keep getting everyone talking. And so that's eventually what turned into the Bo Challenge. So we then have like everybody talking about it, like the guys that are in TNT, like Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, and um, and so we eventually go on and we Dan Patrick, like I was thinking, like it's Patrick something. Uh, we go on and we have everybody buzzing, and so all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, now Bo Cruz is to go on and is to be in Combine because he's such a viral success that everybody's calling for him. So the news is going on and saying that Bo Cruz is to be in Combine, but then also there was another video where Vince Merrick was to try to say that Bo Cruz was to have an assault charge and no one's going to want to touch him, and that Stanley no longer works with the 76ers, that they fired him to try and like snuff the hopes of this guy going into Combined, but like eventually, like he did the Bo Challenge, just win people over. So we go on to the Combine, and so eventually we find out that the guy Kermit is still there, going on and eventually trying to get drafted as well as Bo is. So we go on and have them go through all these tests, all these measurements, all of these like drills that, of course, that Stanley had taught, of course, Bo how to do. So we go on and we now have this scrimmage against Bo and Kermit. And by this time, we now go on and have to showcase the surprise. Because Stanley, after it seems that Bo was to have gone on and done all this training and been successful at it, and this is like the last day before the Combine, Stanley was to go on and do something good for Bo, because Bo is to have missed his kid. So we have it to where all of a sudden Stanley is to show that um, that of course his mother and his daughter are at this swimming pool, and so Bo is just so happy that he jumps in the swimming pool with them, and he's like, "Yeah, like my family's here." So we go on and we have everything that Bo's doing. He's doing it for his family, and uh, like we also have these moments where, of course, Stanley is with Stanley and Bo are having this dinner table with Teresa and Alex, and like talking about how like Teresa and Stanley met one another, how eventually they just like came into like having to go on this bus, and that eventually that led to Stanley telling Teresa that like he's gonna marry her and have all these kids, and so on and so forth. And so yeah, so we go on, and like I feel like I have to backpedal, and I'm sorry. Um but I'm just like whatever kind of pops in my head is whatever is coming here. So we now go to Combine. And so we have it to where Bo, of course, is very nervous for this whole thing. So we have it to where like Stanley's telling Bo a story about an athlete who was to go on and eventually have like eventually faint, like he was getting so like nervous. So Bo buys that, and eventually we come to find out that Stanley's also realized that Teresa was to be the one who fainted. But Stanley's like, well, like I already told him that story. He bought it. So Bo goes to Combine and does this scrimmage with Kermit, and so what happens is that Stanley is to tell Bo that he should be an iceberg, that no matter what anybody says, because all the time people are going to give him crap while he's shooting, like talking about his mother, talking about this, talking about that. So we go on and have it where like Bo at first takes offense step, and then he realizes that like, yeah, I can't go on and just have everybody just give me crap. So we go on and have it where Bo, if Kermit wasn't to tell Bo before that like, well, hey, like you're from Spain, right? Well, you guys like like bull bull stuff there, right? So going on and saying that eventually Bo is going to be like the bull, and Kermit is going to be the matador, and he's going to be dragging him around all day. So we go on, and this time around we have it to where, of course, Bo is to be kind of shut out from Kermit, and so he's like, "Well, hey man, like Olay and all this crap," and I'm like, so Kermit's realizing that what he's saying to Bo isn't working. So he's going on, and at one point, Bo is to be kind of out in the crowd, just consistently looking at his daughter. And Kermit's like, that's it. That's the trigger. So we go on, we have Kermit who's realizing that this girl out in the crowd, he's like, ah. So now we go on and have Kermit who's like, well, hey, uh, like who's the girl in the crowd? Like, where's her mother? And this and that. And so we all of a sudden have Bo get distracted. And so Stanley is going on and telling this coach to like, hey, pull him out for a minute, because like, or otherwise he's gonna drag your team down. So we keep going on and having Kermit just consistently drilling into Bo's head about like, well, hey, like, is that your mom? Is that this and this? Your family? This and that? Your daughter? This and so we go on and have it to finally Bo has just had enough, to where eventually Bo kind of wants to push Kermit, and is tempted to just punch this guy, but he just slams the ground instead. And eventually they're like, oh my god, like this guy is too, like, no one's gonna want to touch him now. Like, this guy had gone on, and like a lot of people are gonna saying that he's a violent player, or he's like, people are gonna like not want to touch him after this. So it's like, oh my god, like this guy has gone so far to have one little thing. But then we have Stanley talking to Leon again, and Leon's like, well, hey, like, there could be redemption for this guy. Like, something could happen, and like things could work out still. So, but we have Stanley that's like, man, I've been putting like $500. Uh, I've been giving this to Pola, and like I'm going on and like I'm funding like everything for Bo Cruz, because Stanley at one point is to finally have had it with Vince Merrick, and because like Vince has kind of had it with Stanley because of trying to sell off Bo Cruz, and Vince Merrick is like, you know what, I'm not interested. I'm not gonna pick up the tab for this player. So like, see you later, bye. And so Stanley used to just get so frustrated with Vince Merrick that he's like, you know what, like, I don't want to work with a guy like you. Like, you know what, I quit. And so now like Stanley is to be paying out of pocket everything for Bo. And so we get to eventually Bo finding out what Stanley had been doing for him, and Bo's like, hey man, I'll pay you back. And Stanley's like, no, like, me training you for this month was like the best like time of my life. And so we go on and we have Stanley, who eventually is to tell Bo this story. Because Bo is to tell Stanley, it's like, well, hey, like you're a rich guy, like you don't know what it's like for me. And so Stanley goes on and tells Bo this story about him going on and eventually having a couple of drinks and deciding to drive one night, and he was to go into a car accident because he was looking at his phone and then looking up uh, at the windshield, and all of a sudden he realizes that like he's going to get into a car accident. And so he ends up going on and trying to protect like the person next to him from the other guy going through the windshield. And Stanley ended up ruining his hand. That's why his hand looks the way it does within most of this movie. And that ended up costing Stanley to be able to go to the NCAA AA World Championships. And Stanley was to never be able to play again, as well as probably a number of those friends of his. So, as well as Stanley also having to spend like 6 months in jail after that. So, we go on and so kind of like that kind of evened them out, that it's like, well, hey, like not all life has been the best. So because we have it to where Stanley's life had all just kind of like went out like that one day, just one mistake. So we go on into this film, and eventually we have Leon, who is to be calling Stanley at like the last second, because we go on and we have Stanley, who is flying off Bo's family, and then he's going to fly off Bo. It's like, well, yeah, like there's nothing else we can do at this point. Like Stanley's going on and desperately asking for a number of like favors and like to take this guy in anywhere. And he's like, man, like I worked for the NBA for like 30 years and it means nothing. So even to where like Alex is just kind of listening on like through the stairwell of what's going on between Stanley and Teresa, kind of hugging him and trying to comfort him because Stanley doesn't know what to do. He wants this guy so badly to somehow or another get into the NBA. So we go on and we have it where Bo and Stanley are on this escalator and we have this hug, and again Stanley used to call him that nickname, the cruise missile, and he's like, yeah, I still hate it. So Bo is leaving and all of a sudden Stanley's getting a call from Leon saying like, hey, like we have a very hush hush like scrimmage going on, like where's your guy, where's Bo? And Stanley's like, oh, well, I just dropped him off at the airport. And he's like, well, is he on the plane? Is the plane going off? And Stanley's like, no, well, then go and get him. So Stanley rushes to go on and get Bo, rushes him back to this hush hush game. So all of a sudden, this time around, Kermit is still up for grabs, I guess, from this hush hush game. So we now have it to where Bo is going on and playing against Kermit and doing very well. And so we had, of course, where like Boston is like, like this Bo guy, like, I don't know, there's something about him. He's looking pretty good, you know? So even though like we have it to where supposedly Bo, the whole assault charge thing could go on and have it to where if he has one little like problem, like his work visa probably goes bye-bye forever. Still, like when really looking at it, if this guy ends up being like a pro basketball player, like you can just hopefully like have that like goodbye. Like I'm never gonna get in trouble ever again. Um, Figure out a way to never get this guy in one lick of trouble ever again. Like never have him go to parties, never like just have him have the rest of it, but he'll have that fortune to eventually hopefully retire off of. But anyways, so yeah, so what ends up happening by the end of this movie is we have it to where Kat Merrick is also being at this hush hush game, and so we have it to where Kat is telling Stanley by the end of this, she's like, well, yeah, it seems that Vince Merrick had gotten himself into some hot water, and so I'm going to like step in and be the owner of this team. And Stanley's like, oh, good, like that's good. So we go on through, and Bo is doing really well, going on and taking out and just doing really well, shooting really well. So we have it to where Stanley's going on and being, I'm assuming, assistant coach back with the 76ers. He's kind of working in this office. And so we go on, we walk on, and are to see that that Bo is to not be with the 76ers. He's instead with the Celtics. And so like Stanley and Bo are kind of having this conversation with one another, like, hey man, like how's it going? Like just kind of catch up kind of things. And so come to find out Bo is actually wearing 22, which is actually Stanley's number, because he like wanted to get that number because of course how like Stanley used to be 22. So the last thing that we end up seeing is Stanley going and talking to some other player about 22 and kind of like what he would go on and how he would eventually move his feet and stuff like that, just to kind of prepare these guys to eventually go and try to counter him, which is kind of funny. But anyways, that's how the movie just kind of ends. Like, I know there was a lot of hodgepodging things that I probably should have said about this movie. I tried to rush through it a lot, so there's that for you. I rushed a lot of it, and then I had to pay for it because I'm like, oh, I have to backpedal. I have to go on and say all these things because I forgot about all of this. So I had to kind of backpedal, but when really looking at it, I also wanted to just kind of try to remember this movie as I was talking. That's what happens sometimes. So that ends up being what it is. Hopefully, I went on and said what happens through most of this movie. At the end of the day, I'm going to get out of my way and get out of here so I can go on and put this out. Without a doubt, let me know in the comments below how you felt about Hustle. But other than that, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.